We are entering a time of maximum tension. These days could mark a turning point for Ukraine. And no, I'm not just saying that because of the summit this Friday between Trump and Putin in Alaska, which is explosive enough on its own. I'm saying it because in the past few hours, something absolutely crucial may have happened. After months in which Kyiv has received increasingly timid, scarce, and much less ambitious military support, Putin's forces appear to have broken through the front line in Donetsk, right in the heart of the Donbass. Friends, the latest reports suggest that Moscow may have achieved a significant advance just before the two most powerful men in Russia and the United States sit face to face. But what's really going on? What could this Alaska summit mean? And exactly where does Ukraine stand right now? That's what we're going to break down. The gap in troop numbers between Russia and Ukraine is becoming enormous. Putin's forces are launching almost constant assaults like clockwork, one after another, while the Ukrainians can barely rotate their men on the front lines. Exhaustion is starting to take its toll, and on top of that, there is another big problem: the lack of delivery of weapons that could truly make a difference. Let's be honest, since Donald Trump took office, the delivery of military equipment to Kyiv has dropped sharply, and Moscow, of course, knows it. That's why they're not holding back now, while the Ukrainians are growing increasingly worn out. The difference is becoming obvious. It's very obvious, in fact. After more than 1 million estimated casualties, wounded, and dead in the nearly 3.5 years of war, Russia keeps pushing day and night, and in recent months has done so with even greater intensity. Yes, people often say the war in Ukraine is at a stalemate, and in part that's true. But that phrase also hides another reality. The lines are far from frozen. Meter by meter, the Russians are trying to push west every single day. There's a catch here that we'll talk about later, but for now, they seem to be succeeding. Although Russia's summer offensive hasn't grabbed big headlines and has largely flown under the radar, it has in fact been making steady progress. Over the past week alone, they've seized about 144 square kilometers, nearly half of that around Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk isn't just a dot on the map. It was a city of 60,000 people and could now play a key role in the course of the war. It's a major rail and road hub connecting much of the front. Controlling it would make troop and supply movements far easier for Russia. For Ukraine, losing it would mean their supply lines could be completely choked off. That's why many military analysts are issuing a stark warning: if Pokrovsk falls, defending the rest of Donetsk will become much harder, which could trigger a domino effect across the region. To stop the Russian advance, Kyiv has deployed one of its most valuable assets to the area: the Azov First Corps of the National Guard. A unit created just this past April 15th. It was designed for large-scale battle operations. This isn't just any units well equipped with tanks, artillery, air defenses, cutting-edge drones, and, most importantly, a full structure that allows it to carry out major offensive and defensive operations independently. Its brigades are made up of experienced combat units. In short, this is an elite force. That means Kyiv has had to commit some of its best troops to stop a Russian push that could endanger the entire Eastern Front. But there's a problem. Even with the Azov First Corps on the ground, in the past few hours, the Russians appear to have broken through Ukrainian defenses in. That could jeopardize the entire eastern defense line. Information is still limited and confusing, but the signs aren't good. The situation seems to be becoming deeply unsettling. The enemy, after spotting gaps in the defense, is infiltrating deep into Ukrainian territory to quickly consolidate positions and gather forces for further advances. And all of this is happening just days before the Trump-Putin summit, something that has understandably set off alarm bells. After all, why would Putin feel any incentive to give ground if his forces appear to be speeding up their occupation? Is there really a will to reach a peace deal? Everything points to the opposite, that Russia is preparing for new offensives. It's time to review a few key points so we don't lose track of the bigger picture. The most anticipated summit. Nobody knows exactly what will happen when Trump and Putin meet in Alaska, but history doesn't give much reason for optimism. In the summer of 2018, during his first term, Trump met with Putin in Helsinki, and many described it as an outright humiliation for the United States. At that meeting, Trump all but embraced the Russian president's narrative. When asked whether he believed his own intelligence services or Putin, Trump didn't hesitate. he said he believed Putin. The backlash in Washington was intense, with figures like Senator John McCain calling it one of the most disgraceful performances by an American president in memory, and former CIA Director John Brennan labeling it nothing short of treason. Trump's evident fascination with Putin is exactly what many fear we could see again. That's why some believe the Alaska summit could end up being a blatant sellout of Ukraine, though of course, we can't know for sure. What we know so far, regardless of the outcome, the very image of Trump and Putin negotiating Ukraine's future without Ukraine at the table is a blow to Kyiv. For Putin, this is a major win. It reinforces his long-standing claim that this is a war between Russia and the West, with Ukraine merely a pawn. For Ukraine, it's humiliating. Zelensky has been clear. Any decision taken without Ukraine is a decision against peace. Kyiv fears a repeat of the 1938 Munich Agreement, when world leaders negotiated Czechoslovakia's fate without its government present with disastrous consequences. Europe doesn't come out looking any better. The summit will be held in the United States. No European delegation is invited, and yet the outcome will directly impact the continent. Europeans have borne much of the political, economic, and military cost of this war, yet they're sidelined. This is also the first time since 2007 that the United States has officially invited a Russian leader to the country outside the UN framework. It's a gesture that usually comes with some goodwill from Moscow. This time, nothing of the sort. Russia is in the middle of an offensive, while the US has already backed down from Trump's earlier ultimatum to impose sanctions. If fighting didn't stop by August 8th, and then there's Russia's reported offer, a ceasefire in exchange for keeping eastern Ukraine, including some areas it doesn't currently occupy, with Ukraine withdrawing from them. Rest of the front would be frozen. Sanctions on Russia would be gradually lifted. And Ukraine would be barred from joining NATO, though still allowed to receive arms. Trump has openly acknowledged there would be a territorial swap, meaning Ukraine might have to give up land it still controls. Zelensky's government has flatly rejected this, pointing to both constitutional limits and overwhelming public opposition. The fear in Kyiv is that a pre-cooked plan could be presented at the summit, with US aid threatened if Ukraine refuses. For Putin, the goal is clear: to reach a deal that leaves Ukraine indefensible and on a path to collapse. Finally, remember that Russia's slow, grinding advance may also be part of Ukraine's own strategy trading. Plan for time in the hope that the high cost to Russia will eventually lead to its military, economic, or political breakdown. Ukraine believes that with Europe's rapidly growing arms industry, time could work in its favor. But they also fear that a bad peace deal now would be far worse than continuing the fight. Meanwhile, Russian markets are rallying ahead of the summit, betting on a favorable outcome for Moscow. Now, all we can do is wait and hope that years of Ukrainian resistance are indeed thrown away for a short-term political win. So, what do you think? What will be agreed upon at this summit? Do you want me to also adapt this into a more news-style American English piece, so it reads like a report instead of a narrative? They could make it even sharper and more concise.